The light particles are all the same light particles, all being different only in pressure condition. This is also true of the elements of matter, whether they be iron, carbon, silicon, bismuth, or radium. All are composed of the same kind of light particles. They all seem to have different qualities and attributes, but those qualities and attributes are likewise given to them purely by the positions they occupy in their waves. All things simulate light. A particle of light, which belongs to an atomic system of sodium, has in it all of the entire range of the elements, besides all of every other creating thing in the universe. It acts to carry out the purposefulness of the idea of sodium simply because it is in the pressure condition of sodium, and is a part of the unfolding pattern of the seed of inert gas, of the octave from which it has unfolded. If that same particle unfolded from the seed of the oak, it would be part of the wood fiber of its trunk or leaf, or of the chlorophyll which colored its leaves, but it would be the same kind of particle while fulfilling the purpose of cellulose, as while fulfilling the purpose of sodium. All matter in this universe is but differently conditioned, motion simulating light, and all differences in condition are pressure differences. Light does not travel. The speed with which light presumably travels is 186,400 miles per second. The distance between stars is so great that the speed of light is computed as light years, for the distance computed by lesser units of time would yield figures so great that they would be meaningless. Light only seems to travel. It is but one more of the countless illusions caused by wave motion. Waves of the ocean seem to traverse the ocean, but they only appear to do so, for waves are pistons in the universal engines, and pistons operate up and down. Wave pistons of light or of the ocean operate radially and spirally inward and outward, toward and away from gravity. Waves of light do not travel. They reproduce each other from wave field to wave field of space. The planes of zero curvature, which bound all wave fields, act as mirrors to reflect light from one field into another. This sets up an appearance of light as traveling, which is pure illusion. The sunlight we feel upon our bodies is not actual light from the sun. What actually is happening is that the sun is reproducing its own condition on the earth by extending the reproductions out through cold space into ever-enlarging wave fields until those reproductions begin to converge again toward our center of gravity into even smaller wave fields. The heat we feel and the light we see are dependent entirely upon the ability of the wave fields to reproduce the light and heat, and that ability is conditioned upon the amount of moisture in the atmosphere. If there were no moisture in the atmosphere, our bodies would carbonize from the heat thus reproduced. One cannot consistently think of that heat as direct rays of the sun, for that same sunlight was intensely cold during its reproduced journey through the immensely expanded wave fields of space between the sun and earth. The light and heat which appear to come from the star or sun have never left the star or sun. That which man sees as light and feels as heat are the reproduced counterparts of the light and heat which are its cause. The rate of vibration in a wave field depends upon its volume. Vibration in a wave field means the pulse of interchange between its compressed core and the space surrounding that core. A slow vibration in a large wave field would cool one's body or even freeze it, while fast pulsing interchange in extremely small wave fields could burn one's body. A lens which multiplies light and heat toward a focal point which sets paper on fire merely compresses larger wave fields into smaller ones. The rate of vibration increases for the same reason that the planets nearest the sun move much faster in their small orbits than those which are far away from the sun. Kepler's law, covering the speeds of planets, will apply to rates of vibration in wave fields so appropriately as with the movements in the solar system. The imaged universe of my dual thinking is a two-way interchanging between unbalanced lever ends of light, which extend from me, their fulcrum of power in rest, and return to me. Behold in me the fulcrum of my changing universe, which manifests change, though I change not, nor move. For I am rest. In me alone is balance. He who would find power must know that he extends from me, that I am he. He who would find rest must return to me, be fulcrum of his own power. From the Divine Iliad. Chapter 13, Cycles. All energy is expressed in wave cycles. A cycle is a two-way electric journey from a compression point of rest, where gravity ceases and radiation begins, to an expansion point of rest at wave field boundaries, where radiation ceases and gravity begins. It is the universal heartbeat of this pulsing universe of two-way motion. The life-death cycle of man is one wave in an electric current. Growth and decay, or the incoming-outgoing, is the universal heartbeat of this pulsing universe of two-way motion. Matter is expressed in two-way cycles because matter is but a record of God's knowing, expressed by the two opposed desires of His two-way self-voiding thinking. All nature is an expression of the two desires of the Creator, the desire for separation from the oneness of rest in Him, into a multiplicity of imaged forms of His imagining, and for avoidance of that multiplicity by a return to rest in His oneness. A cycle is like winding and unwinding a clock spring, except that matter is wound up into visible spheres and unwound into invisible cubes. The unwinding of a clock spring is a reverse process from that of its winding. Nature is continuous. It never reverses. Like the piston in an engine or two children on a seesaw, nature turns its waves inside out and outside in a continuous spiral flow of direction. Solid matter gradually interchanges with space in its breathing cycles until gravitation has attained its maximum. Radiation then exceeds the power of gravitation, and matter begins to expand instead of to contract. Radiation is light outwardly bound from the seed. Gravitation is light inwardly bound toward the seed. Outwardly bound light manifests the unfolding of pattern light from the seed. It is the mother of creation. Inwardly bound light manifests the refolding of pattern light into its seed. It is the father of creation. The mother of creation gives pattern bodies to idea by unfolding idea unto the heavens. That is the first half of every cycle. The Father refolds all unfolding idea back toward its seed. Otherwise, the unfolding form could not become visible as matter. That is the second half of every cycle. All growing things manifest this unfolding and refolding process in every pulsation of interchange between the Father-Mother lights of creation. The outward-inward breath of all things is the constant interchanging cyclic process by means of which one opposite gradually becomes the other, until each becomes the other in totality by completing the interchange. Each outward-inward breath is a cycle. Each half cycle is cancelled by its other half until both are cancelled. Neither then manifests. Both disappear into their equilibrium to reappear as the other. Life and death gradually interchange to cancel each other for the purpose of repeating the cycle of life and death. Death is born in the same cradle with life, but life is strong while death is weak. From the very first breath of the newborn babe, death voids life by each outward breath, and life voids death by each inward breath. At maturity, death has become balanced with life, and death then becomes stronger, until both disappear to reappear with life as the stronger, and death with the weaker opposite. This expanding universe. It is said that the universe is expanding to a heat death, that all heat is gradually going out of the universe, leaving it utterly cold and empty. It is believed that radiation is a downhill flow of energy, which is not compensated for by an equal uphill flow. Radiation is known as radiant energy. Radiation is but the outbreathing of this universal body, which breathes in its entirety exactly as man and all things else in nature breathe. Radiation is the unfolding mother light. The inbreathing of nature is gravitation. Gravitation is the father light, which refolds that which unfolds. For every drop of water that radiant energy discharges from the earth, gravitation energy charges it with falling waters. One of these opposites is the downhill flow of expressed energy, and the other is its equal uphill flow. Every creating thing in this universe has a father and a mother. Not only animal and vegetable life, but every corpuscle of matter in the universe. Likewise, every creating thing is both father and mother. The mother borns the father, and the father borns the mother. The proton borns the electron, and the electron the proton. Each was the other, and each sequentially becomes the other through the pulsing breath of wave interchange. Deceptive evidence. One of the illusions which deceived man into believing that God's universal body was dying was the discovery that all nebulae are rushing away from each other with incredible velocities. This fact would lead to the utter dissolution of the universe in time. The so-called red shift in the spectrum proved this to be fact. The fact is true. They do rush away from each other, but the conclusion drawn from that observed fact is not justified by the processes of natural law. The reason for the universal expansion which is now taking place is that the universe as a whole breathes inward and outward, just as all things in nature do. Large-scale breathing cycles of the whole universal body consume untold eons for the completion of one cycle, while man consumes but a few seconds to complete his cycle. Man of eons to come will witness the effect of nebulae rushing toward each other at the same speeds for the same number of eons. In all nature, there is no effect of motion which is not balanced by an opposite effect. The universe is sexed throughout. One sex cannot exist without the other. Radiant energy is impossible without generative energy to born it. The desire of the Creator for separateness must be balanced with His desire for oneness. The expansion stroke of the universal piston must have a balancing compression stroke in order that the universal body may manifest the life of its Creator. The whole universe slowly expands toward the death half of its breathing cycle and then contracts toward the life half of it. Naught is there in all my universe which is not part and counterpart pairs of things, equal and opposite counterpart pairs of creating and repeating things, each seeking to unbalance each, and each forever seeking balance in each. Every separate mass in the universe is in its own part of its cycle, either inbreathing toward the high point of its maturity or outbreathing toward its resurrection. Each one, whether generating or degenerating, is being generated into extended life by the inbreathing of the whole, of which each is an indissoluble part. In my imaged universe all things are two, centered by me, for all things extend from the dual, two-way moving pendulum of my thinking, and my thinking is two. I, the one light, center the two lights which register my thinking, but I am not those two lights, nor am I my thinking. Behold in me the Trinity, the one extended unto the two, the one Creator centering the extended two. In my imaged universe all effect is also two, all thermal measures and the weights of things, the two of matter and of time and direction, the two of color and of the elements, the two of the wave of my thinking and its expression. The very one light of me is extended in the two lights of my imagining. For behold, I am light, but the universe of my imagining is dual light. Light divided and multiplied by common root directly and inversely applied to all things, which forever move two ways between the two extended lights of their centering one, to express my knowing by my thinking. From the Divine Iliad. Chapter 14. Weight. Weight is a measure of unbalance. It indicates the intensity of desire of any mass which is out of balance to find balance. Every mass in the universe has its proper potential position. Every mass will find that position if not prevented from doing so by the bindings of other masses. Weight should be measured dually as temperature is. It should have an above and a below zero to measure the intensity of desire in masses to rise from the earth as well as to fall toward it. Weight is matter out of place. All matter is a record of its potential at the place of its birth in its wave. Masses of matter, like buoys floating in the ocean to mark courses for ships, are floating in space to register the electric potential of the position of their birth. Whenever matter is in the place of its birth, it belongs there. It is therefore in balance. It floats in its balanced field. In that position, it is weightless in respect to anything else in the universe. Whenever it is taken from its field center or becomes an eccentric part of another field, it is out of balance with the two forces acting upon it. It then has weight, and the measure of that weight is the measure of its unbalance with its out-of-place environment. Weight of matter and measure of electric potential are one and the same thing. Weight is unbalance. A body which floats has no measurable weight. It is in balance with its environment. Likewise, a dead battery has no measurable electric potential. The ammeter needle points to zero. Its two unbalanced conditions of charge and discharge have become voided by each other. The measure called weight and the measure called electric potential are the expression of force which the two electric opposites of charge and discharge exert against each other at any point in the universe. The potential of all orbits of matter in space in which matter floats is equal to the potential of the mass which floats in it. The plane of our Earth's equatorial region coincides with an equipotential plane of pressure which is equally balanced in respect to that part of the Earth which floats above that plane, and that part which floats below it. In this plane, the Earth has no weight whatsoever in respect to anything in the entire universe, for it is in a balanced position in respect to the entire universe and keeps moving into a new position only because of the movement of all other masses in the universe. Our balanced Earth is weightless. The Earth could have weight only if removed to other pressures farther extended from the plane of the lens-like wheel of which our Sun is the hub. If it could be pushed toward the Sun by some giant hand, it would seek balance in its own orbit when released, exactly as a man would rise when plunged beneath his own balance level in water. Every freely moving mass in the universe floats in its own equally divided wave field, exactly as a man floats in water. The moon is not falling upon the earth as generally supposed, for it is in balance with its environment and cannot fail. Its contracted mass is equal to the expanded mass it displaces in its wave field. For the same reason, a cloud floats in the sky. If one could put scales under it, one would find it had no weight unless lifted above or thrust below its equipotential level. If it condensed into heavier vapor, it would fall to seek a new static equator where it would again float. If it condensed to rain, it would fall into the sea to find balance in a like condition. Weight is not a fixed property of matter. It is a variable, as matter is variable. A man weighs less as he climbs a mountain, weighs more as he descends into a mine, and weighs nothing when he floats in water. Unless and until matter is extended from a plane of equal pressure, there can be no weight, nor can there be electric potential. Weight curves gravity. The equilibrium of sea level is a good example. If that static equator has no dynamic wave extensions, there can be no electric pressures exerted to express in weight, nor could there be weight of waves when waves are not extended from it. Waves above sea level have a positive weight when they fall toward gravity. Waves below sea level have negative weight when they rise toward space to find balance at sea level. Weight is, therefore, but a dimension of unbalance. Unbalance alone can be weighed, for there can be no weight to balance. Weight defined. The following definitions of weight are in keeping with natural law. Weight is the sum of the differences between the two pressures which act upon every mass. Weight is the measure of the differences in electric potential between any mass and the volume it occupies. Weight is the measure of unbalance between any mass and its displaced environment. Weight is the measure of the force which a body exerts in seeking its true potential. Weight is the sum of the difference between the inward pull of gravitation and the outward thrust of radiation. Weight is the measure of intensity of the desire within all matter to express motion or seek rest from motion. So if I become in balance, I shall be weightless. For again I say, each of the two lights which giveth form to my knowing through my thinking, giveth its all to the other one to become the other one sequentially. Light giveth to darkness to again become light, as life giveth to death to again become life. Likewise, darkness of heaven giveth darkness unto suns to again become dark, as suns giveth light unto heavens to again become suns. Thus wise, all things of earth giveth unto heavens to again become earth things by the giving of heavens. Thus do all my creating things simulate the oneness of my knowing, by interchanging their all for oneness in me. That interchanging records my knowing in pulsations of my thinking, but my thinking is not me. My knowing is alone me. From the Divine Iliad. Chapter 15. The source of solar energy. One of the greatest mysteries of science is the source of the sun's renewing energy. At the present rate of solar radiation, the sun should have burned out long ago.
We don't have solar panels on our houses yet. Somebody please tell me that. I was a kid back in the 70s. Yes, I'm dating myself, but whatever. We were talking about solar energy then. What happened to it? I mean, I know it's more readily available, but seriously, it should be everywhere. It should be absolutely everywhere. Unless there's a flaw. But I don't understand why it hasn't been figured out yet.
Fires burning. What is it that generates heat in the sun to keep it from cooling? One theory is that its contraction generates it, for contraction supposedly heats. But that is not the answer, for contraction does not heat nor generate. Contraction is possible only as a result of generation, not as its cause. Generation must precede contraction. It does not follow it. Heat follows as a result of contraction. Heat radiates. Radiation is the opposite of generation, and opposites act in opposite ways. Radiation expands and the resultant expansion cools, while generation contracts and the resultant contraction heats. Here again is the father-mother principle manifesting its law of equal, opposite, and sequential interchange. The cold of expanded space generates the sun's heat by compressing large volume into smaller volume. The high pressure of incandescence is born from the low pressure of vacuous blackness, in accordance with the law of rhythmic balanced interchange between all pairs of father-mother opposites. The temperature cycle. The temperature cycle resulting from balanced interchange between the cold of space and the heat of suns is as follows. Cold generates, generation contracts, contraction heats, heat radiates, radiation expands, and expansion cools. Thus, our hot sun is being generated from cold space via its poles and is radiated back again into space via its equator, in accord with the father-mother reciprocative process of inside-out, outside-in turning, and will continue to generate increasing heat in the sun until it becomes a true sphere. This spherical perfection has not yet been attained, for the sun has not yet reached the amplitude of its wave where all forming matter becomes true spheres. One opposite borns the other. When the amplitude position is attained, its radiation will then begin to exceed its generation. It will then be the same condition as a man who has just passed his maturity high point, when death and life interchange their preponderances. From that point on, cold space will bore a black hole through the sun, from pole to pole, and it will expand into a giant ring, centered by a smaller sun, recondensed from the remnant of its expanding self. Many such ring nebulae are visible in the heavens, notably in the Lyra Ring Nebula, M57, figure 61, page 252. The star tells the whole story. Excellent examples of the degeneration of a sun into a ring or rings by the inside-out turning process of negative electricity are the Owl Nebula, M97, in, I'm just going to spell it, Ursae Majoris, and the Dumbbell Nebula in Vulpeculi, figure 62, page 252. One can likewise witness this inside-out turning process in his kitchen range. Jets of burning gas are seen as a blue and green flame around black holes, which center each jet. These gases are negatively preponderant, which means that they are thrusting out from their center in excess of pulling inward from it. There is no death. He who seeketh life without the light will find death. But he who seeketh the light will find eternal life, even when he walketh toward death. He who knoweth not the light shall die to find it, but he who knoweth the light shall never die. In man's inhaling there is life, and death trails his exhaling. Yet must man breathe out to live again, and deeply, in that he may die. Know thou that I alone live, I do not die. But out of me cometh both seeming life and death. Life is but the inward flow of my thinking's divided pulsing, and death is its outward flow. Know also that the divisions of my thinking are but equal halves of one, for I again say that I am one, and that all things which come from me are one, divided to appear as two. All things come and go from my divided thinking. All coming things are living things, and those which go are dead. Know thou that all creating things are resurrected from the dead, and dead things live again through my divided thinking. Again I say that all things are bound as one through light. I am forever creating my living body and destroying it in seeming death, that it may live in me to die and live again. The end of life and death is life's new beginning. Both life and death are one in me. All things are forever living and forever dying, and while they live they die, and also while they are in death they live. Such is my decree, my universal law, from which there is no escape for man or star or grain of sand. For all things flow from me, that they may appear to man, and return to me, that they may disappear from his senses in the cycle of my thinking. I am the repetitive God. All things which flow to me and from me flow again both ways through me forever in a cycle which ends not, nor has begun. From my right hand life flows one way and returneth to me full spent as death, while full death floweth the other way and returneth to me renewed as life. Around my cycle both life and death wend their opposed ways, each seeking each until the twain meet balanced at maturity, where each gives half to each. But when they pass that halfway point on their separate ways to me, each then gives thought to each, and then both know, as they return to me, that each are both, and both are one. In me, death is the seed of life. Death rebounds from death as life. From death springeth from the soil, and from life death floweth even as the perfume leaves the rose. Death giveth of itself to life, that life may live, and likewise life giveth to death, that death may die. Life is regenerating death, and death is life degenerating. Light leaves thy sun as death, and comes to thee as life. And when thy death leaves thee, it likewise becomes new life, to whom or in what its impact quickens with thy death. Two ways there are of breath, the inward charging breath of life, and the outward discharging breath of death. All opposed pairs of my divided thinking pass in opposite ways along these two paths in their traversing of my cycle. All things which I have divided into pairs of opposites have within them both life and death, but one of these is greater than the other until they meet as equals halfway round my life-death cycle. When once they meet and pass, they then exchange these qualities, the greater growing lesser and the lesser growing greater. Even though life is full when life is born, death emanates from life itself as death and takes the opposite path towards death. Likewise does life emanate from death to weaken it when death is strong, until life conquereth death to make death live as life. Verily I say, life cannot live without dying as it lives, nor can death conquer life and gather aught to it but death. Life is my multiplying breath of compressive action, and death is my dividing, opposed breath which expands as life's reaction. Hear thou me when I again say that life and death are opposites which pass each other on my cycle going opposite ways. Life attracteth life to life by its compression, and death repelleth both death and life by its expansion. I am the interchanging point of life and death. I balance life with death, and never in their changing can either death or life outbalance death or life. Write thou that death and life are one, as the swinging pendulum is one, e'en though it oscillates two ways in its incessant swinging. He who travels east in my curved universe arrives at west as surely as he who travels west. Likewise, life traileth the eastern road to arrive at death, while death taketh the western road where life awaiteth to quicken death as life. So also does death traileth the road of life to interchange with life, while life likewise traileth the road of death to find itself through death. Hear thou me say there is no death in all my imagined universe. In it is naught but life. For naught but life and love is in me and my knowing. Naught is there in my thinking which is not my knowing, and naught but life and love are in my thinking. Take thou man's death away from him in this new day of man. Give him eternal life in me by knowing me in him. From the Divine Iliad. Chapter 16. The Life Principle. For centuries, man has been searching for the life principle in germs of matter. He might as well cast his nets into the sea to search for oxygen. There is no life in matter, nor is there death, for matter is but motion. It begins and ends, to begin again, but life is immortal. It has no beginning. It has no ending. It cannot die. Man has long believed his body to be his self, the person, the being. Man's body is but motion. It can have no being. God dwells in man, the person. The being in man is immortal. Life in him is God in him. The body of man manifests God in him by manifesting life in life-death resurrection sequences, as all creating, decreating, recreating things in nature likewise do. The body of man must be forever reborn unto the endless end to manifest God in him. There is naught but birth in this cyclic, pulsing universe. There is no death. The idea of man is a part of the one whole idea of creation. All creation is but an expression of that one idea, part by part, each being a part of the whole. God gives an eternal repetition of bodies to all parts of his idea, to manifest that idea in wave cycles of the divided light of his thinking. One half of each cycle unfolds the idea into the form of that idea, and gives it action for producing that form. The other half of the cycle refolds the idea to give it rest in the light of its source, for the purpose of repeating the manifestation in a repetition of that body. A return to rest in the light is not death. It is a return to life, for the purpose of rebirth to again manifest life in a renewed body. We do not say that man is death when he rests in sleep to partially renew his body. We know that he will awaken with new parts of his body to replace those which have served their purpose and disappeared. When man's whole body wears out and needs replacement, he likewise rests in a longer sleep. Man's body is but patterned waves of light in motion. Waves disappear into the ocean's calm, but they reappear. The ocean is a part of the idea of creation. Waves express the idea of the power of the ocean, but the power and the idea are in the calm of the ocean, whether expressed by waves or not. The turbulence of the ocean springs from its calm just as the movement of the lever springs from its still fulcrum. All motion is a two-way extension of stillness. We do not think that the ocean is dead, while it is at rest in its calm, for we know that it will again manifest its power by waves of motion, when desire is strong enough in it for manifesting it by motion. Waves of light which give transient form to a man's body are but his body. They are not the man, nor the man idea. The body of the man is an extension of other waves of father-mother light in the sun, and the idea of man exists in the still light which centers the sun. Man can never die, for he is omnipresent light, and he exists everywhere. Likewise, man's body cannot die, for man's body manifests immortal man, and immortal man always has a body in which to manifest. This body which extends from the earth disappears into the heavens and the earth, but that which disappears to sensed man of earth has not ceased to be, for its pattern has been recorded for repetition. It still is and will reappear. The senses of man are not attuned to the rest of the cycle of man's bodily journey from disappearance to reappearance, but man's knowing reaches out over the entire cycle, and man can know eternal repetitiveness of his body when he knows God in himself. When water disappears beyond the senses as water, vapor, and gases, we know they will reappear as water when they have completed their cyclic journey. As man knows the light in him, he will as surely know that he will return from eons to complete the purpose of manifesting his Creator as one part of the whole idea. That purpose cannot be completed in one life cycle, nor in 10 times 10 million life cycles. Man has but begun to express the man idea on this planet. He still has a long way to go, and the body he needs in which to manifest will return to him as surely as the light of day reappears from the darkness of night into which it has disappeared.